As it approached, a strange buzzing noise grew louder, but I felt viscerally awake. I was afraid I would die. Why do you see ghosts? I will include a link to the papers I read to create this video in the description. This video is not meant to be used as a real treatment and is instead a look into some of the proposed methods created to help trained professionals guide an individual towards less ISP attacks. If I miss information or make a mistake, please let me know in the comments and I will do my best to respond and correct. My goal is to have fun researching and talking about a topic I find interesting and share that with the people around me. I hope I can inspire you to try the same. What is ISP? Sleep paralysis is one of the symptoms of narcolepsy. Narcolepsy is a rare autoimmune disorder that affects less than 1% of the population. Sleep paralysis itself can occur without narcolepsy. In this case, it would be isolated or isolated sleep paralysis. Isolated sleep paralysis is a condition in which people are unable to move or speak while they are falling asleep or waking up. It is often accompanied give me a moment. It is often accompanied by vivid and sometimes frightening hallucinations and can last anywhere from a few seconds to several hours. Good gravy. These hallucinations are described to be all over the scary, wild, or even mundane spectrum. We will go over some examples in this here video. So isolated sleep paralysis can be triggered by anxiety and even PTSD. Sleep paralysis typically happens as an individual falls asleep or is about to wake up. During an episode of isolated sleep paralysis, a person may feel like they are unable to move or speak, and may also experience hallucinations and a sense of panic or fear. These episodes are typically brief, lasting only a few minutes, and they resolve on their own. The criteria to be diagnosed with recurring isolated sleep paralysis involves experiencing 4 or more isolated sleep paralysis events in 1 year. The next couple of minutes are going to be examples of scary hallucinations I was able to find online. It's hard to prove if these are actually the result of sleep paralysis without studying the individuals who tell them, but I think that they are fun to read and might have the ability to help people understand what sleep paralysis might consist of. Here's a story I found describing what people have posted about their experience during SP on Reddit on r/sleep paralysis. Oh my goodness. By 0 awkward 0 throwaway 0 : For me, it feels like this. When I sense it coming, my hearing gets weird. I hear a weird, blunt, but at the same time, loud, vibrating noise. I feel my mind disconnect from my body. I go into an altered state of consciousness. I am lucid, but at the same time, I feel I could slip into an abyss. In full paralysis, if I try to move my body, I either feel tingling, pain, or both. It's impossible to talk. I may hallucinate moving, and I'm not sure where my body parts actually lie. Sometimes I'm able to open my eyes, but it's hard. Usually the whole episode is like a trip. It might be euphoric and/or terrifying. I either wake the rest of myself up from it, or I fall asleep completely. Edit. A little side note, About the pressure on chest. I'm assuming they mean on my chest, but About the pressure on chest. I used to feel it when I was younger. It scared the hell out of me, and it was hard to breathe. I was afraid I would die, but nowadays I don't experience that, only when the trip is really bad, like someone choking me, although I do feel the tingling sensation on my chest as well. Quite a freaky little story if you ask this guy. Here's another one. By a deleted account. I usually have episodes when I'm traveling or under large amounts of stress or heavily sleep deprived. I will tell you 2 of my personal episodes. This was my first experience with sleep paralysis. I had been working long hours at 2 jobs, so my sleep and stress levels were affected. It started with me drifting off into a quick nap in between shifts. This sleep felt heavier than usual when it began. My body felt anchored to the bed almost immediately, but I felt viscerally awake. I opened my eyes, which were heavy, to see a black human-shaped mass in the corner of my room. Oh gosh. It had a strange, heavy, menacing presence about it, and it made me feel very uncomfortable. And although it was a black figure, I immediately knew who this figure was. It was my father. It began to approach the bed slowly. I couldn't move, scream, or close my eyes. As it approached, a strange buzzing noise grew louder. The presence was more and more menacing. Finally, I woke fully. Once it reached the side of my bed, I was terrified. It was very hard for me to sleep the rest of the week. 2. By this particular experience, I'd had a few under my belt, so I was somewhat familiar with the symptom. Black figure with undefined features, loud noises, no mobility, etc. So I was able to try and take the episode on as I was not getting too worked up about it. However, this particular episode was very different. I was camping with my SO, that's a significant other, in a pretty secluded area, and we had went to bed for the night. I felt myself awake in the middle of the night. I looked at the top of the tent to see the moonlight casting shadows on the top and sides of the tent from various foliage around us. Suddenly, I heard heavy dragging footsteps from outside the tent. I had immediately thought it was my partner using the bathroom, but then I realized he was still sleeping to my left. The footsteps grew louder, and a shadow of a figure cast across the tent wall. It was at this point I had realized I wasn't moving, but I thought I was from fear. This figure had a large, heavy, menacing presence about it. It continued to walk past the tent and began to shuffle through our campsite, mumbling to itself. This continued for what seemed like an hour. It had subsided, and I shot up and woke my partner, explained the situation, and was convinced someone or an animal was at our campsite. It was terrifying. We both strained to listen for any other movement or sounds, which never came. The only thing that calmed us from the situation and made me realize it wasn't reality, and it was a strange episode, was my SO pointing out that if indeed someone was at our site, our dogs would have absolutely reacted to the situation. The dogs go crazy, you know. But they were both still asleep at our feet. I hadn't had an episode since, but I will say, I've never been so terrified in my life. I also decided I would include a little of my own experience in ISP, just because it felt relevant. And this is also one of the things that makes me interested in the topic itself. So here we go. My experience. I've only had one isolated sleep experience. I remember opening my eyelids and not being able to move. All I could see was the wall of the room and the bed I was sleeping in, due to my body laying on its side. You can imagine me. I couldn't move my body, head, or eyes. I thought I heard the shuffling and talkings of a party going on in the other room. It sounded very real, like I could almost make out what they were saying. I could hear glasses clinking and the shuffling of feet. Part of me knew this was not real, but I was confused and not sure what to think. It sounded very real. Even having read very little about ISP, I knew that I was probably having an ISP incident. I started to concentrate on waking up. I eventually woke up a couple seconds later, and the sounds of the party were replaced by silence. I had to get up and check the house to make sure there was nothing happening. This whole experience only lasted for what I assume was a couple seconds, but in the moment it felt very thrilling and strange. This experience was interesting to me because of how real the party sounded. It leads me to empathize with people who see horrible hallucinations and fear them. Explaining the methods to get rid of ghosts. Historically, ISP has been very hard to treat. There are no real pharmacological treatments that work long-term. There have been a couple methods that have come across in my research. I will list out 2 in this video. What is meditation combined with muscle relaxant therapy, MR therapy in short? Meditation combined with muscle relaxant therapy is a treatment proposed by Jalal, I hope I said that right, and his paper named How Do I Make the Ghosts in My Bedroom Disappear? If you can't tell, inspired the name of this video. Focused attention combined with muscle relaxation, MR therapy, is a direct treatment intervention for sleep paralysis. In the paper, 4 steps were given as a guide for escaping an ISP attack. Step 1, reappraisal of the meaning of the attack. The individual tells themselves that the attack they're experiencing is the individual tells themselves that the attack they are experiencing is common. It's just another instance of ISP. Step 2, psychological and emotional distancing. The individual must tell themselves that in response to the attack being common, it should be ignored. There is no reason to be afraid of the attack. Worrying could lead and make the attack worse or prolong unnecessary emotions. Step 3, inward focused attention meditation. The individual should focus on something different than what is happening to them in that moment. It is recommended to focus on something positive. Some examples include a memory of a loved one or an event, a hymn/prayer, and or God. Side note, reading through these papers gave me a new focus on prayer and how it's effective against an ISP attack. It is mentioned a couple times by different researchers that prayer seems to help individuals escape from an attack. I feel like this might be because it's similar to a meditation where you focus on the words of the prayer and lose focus on what is happening around you. It is something that the individual might have memorized and can transport their mind to a scene outside of the attack through a rehearsal of the prayer. A little side note, I thought the prayer thing was kind of interesting. Step 4, muscle relaxation while engaging in focused inwards attention meditation. The individual will relax all their muscles to avoid controlling breathing. The goal is to completely let go. It is also mentioned that the individual should adopt a non-judgmental attitude towards their physical symptoms. My super short and sweet summary of MR therapy goes as follows. Don't think about what is happening. Focus on the good things and let go of your worry. Balland recommends practicing this method regularly, specifically while laying in the supine position. Apparently, you are more likely to have an ISP attack while you're laying in the supine position. This is heartbreaking news because I sleep like a textbook example of supine. Balland also recommends long-term general meditation training as it might be effective in the effectiveness of MR. Reaching step 4 is much easier if you have training to guide your mind into a place like focused inward attention meditation. Balland shows research that long-term meditation practitioners spend more time in slow-wave sleep. This can be beneficial for sleep quality. What is cognitive behavioral therapy for isolated sleep paralysis? CBT-ISP. CBT-ISP is a therapy treatment proposed by Sharpless B and Doghramji K. Doghramji, I'm so sorry, in their book Sleep Paralysis, Historical, Psychological, and Medical Perspectives. If you are interested in ISP, I would recommend their book. For this video, I focused on Appendix C. I plan on reading the whole thing. As the name implies, CBT-ISP is a cognitive behavioral method. They lay out a very detailed plan, including 4 specific instructions for session layouts and even instructions for additional sessions in their book. Session 1 includes orientation and rapport building, assessment, interview, and use of questionnaire and self-monitoring. Summary. By the end of this initial session, the therapist should 1. Establish a rudimentary therapeutic alliance, 2. Compile accurate diagnostic information for isolated sleep paralysis, 3. Administer several questionnaires of relevant phenomena, i.e. insomnia, anxiety, sensitivity, in order to facilitate treatment planning. Number 3. Summarize preliminary diagnostic findings to the patient, and if warranted, 4. Begin a 2-week period of self-monitoring of symptoms. Session 2 includes reviewing the sleep diaries, psychoeducation, presenting the CBT-ISP model, ISP-specific sleep hygiene, intro to diaphragmatic, I'm going to say intro to diaphragmatic breathing. Summary. By the end of the session, the therapist should 1. Review sleep diaries from the previous 2 weeks. 2. Complete basic psychoeducation on isolated sleep paralysis tailored to the patient's unique symptomatic experiences. 3. Provide a brief explanation of the CBT model for isolated sleep paralysis. 4. Provide ISP-specific sleep hygiene instructions. 5. Instruct patients to the use of diaphragmatic breathing or other form of relaxation, both as a potential preventative and as a way to reduce the intensity of episodes. 6. Summarize the session. And 7. Assign homework. Jeez Louise. Session 3 includes the sleep diaries, again, assigning an ISP disruptive technique and practicing that technique and using imagery rehearsal. Summary. By the end of this session, the therapist should 1. Review sleep diaries from the previous week, modifying relaxation approaches if needed. 2. Assign at least 1 sleep paralysis disruption technique. 3. Practice the disruption technique using imagery rehearsal. 4. Summarize the session. And 5. Assign homework. These all kind of include homework, which is kind of funny. Session 4 includes, 1 again, the sleep diaries, disputing catastrophic thought, and an optional model which ways to cope with hallucinations. Summary. By the end of the session, the therapist should 1. Review sleep diaries from the previous week, modifying relaxation and disruption approaches if needed. 2. Begin disputing catastrophic thought or imagery rehearsal if PMR was conducted in the previous session. 3. If warranted, begin work on reducing the impact of hallucinations. 4. Summarize the session. And 5. Assign homework. Additional sessions. Summary. should significant sleep paralysis symptoms remain, or if it appears clinically warranted to continue fine-tuning CBT-ISP techniques. 1 or more additional sessions should take place before the termination. They should each begin with 1, a review of the diaries and homework, 2, assessing the efficacy, prevention/disruption techniques with fine-tuning/substitution of techniques, if necessary, 3, briefly reviewing session content, and 4, assigning homework. While the entirety of the sessions are the treatment, I feel that session 3 contains some of the juiciest parts of the treatment, with the assignment of the ISP disrupting technique. These would be the most helpful in the event that you might have to get rid of a ghost in your bedroom. Alongside DB, in parentheses, deep breaths, and other relaxation methods, patients should be given at least 1 other technique. They state that attempts to move parts of the body and strategies that attempts to calm down or can cease the attack. Of the people we've interviewed, attempting to move fingers, wiggle one's toes, and move other extremities were reported to be most effective, followed by attempts to move the torso and other body parts, e.g. one's mouth or head. Patients should be directed to immediately focus their attention on the targeted body part as soon as they are aware of the paralysis. They should also be instructed to focus their attention regardless of other sleep paralysis-related experiences that might be occurring. Some might find it helpful to use mental commands to maintain their focus on the task. Patients should be informed that it is not expected that one single attempt to move will be effective, but that the repeated and persistent attempts have been found to result in the dissolution of episodes. Given that breathing is under some degree of conscious control, this approach also appears to be promising. We specifically recommend use the reassuring self-talk, e.g., I'm having a sleep paralysis episode, which is not dangerous, and it will eventually be over. During episodes, trying to let go and go along with the paralysis has also been reported to disrupt episodes. For some religious individuals, soothing prayer has helped to get through the episode more quickly. Similarities in both MR and CBT-ISP. The goal of both CBT-ISP and MR are shared in that they both want the individual to have the tools to get out of an attack while it is happening. One major difference is the idea of movement in CBT-ISP and MR. CBT-ISP wants the patient to try their best to move, while MR wants the patient to relax and keep the body from moving at all. CBT-ISP has a much more structured layout, while MR is a lot more simple. I found it interesting that both cite prayer as a potential way to get through an attack for religious individuals. It might be interesting to do a whole video on prayer and just the potential benefits outside of a religious context. Just looking at prayer in comparison to meditation, I feel like off the top of my head there are a lot of similarities. Potentially, prayer can be seen as a form of meditation. Based on the paper I found published in 2021 by Aleksey Igorevich called Cognitive Behavioral Therapy in the Treatment of Recurrent Isolated Sleep Paralysis, it is mentioned that both MR therapy and CBT-ISP therapy have been tested and work in their practice. It is hard to say that this is a reliable paper due to how simple this paper is. There are no data points, just personal testimony. This being the only real example of practice outside of the authors who created both MR and CBT-ISP that I could find, proves to me that both of these therapies need more testing. Maybe one of these work better, or maybe they both don't work at all. Whatever the case, more studies need to be done to figure out what works and what doesn't. I hope I was able to explain the therapies for ISP for you in a clear way. I enjoyed researching these and I'm excited to make another video. Let me know if there are any topics you are interested. And also, please, sorry, I keep hearing crazy stuff. Please, if you've gotten this far into the video, please leave me a like. I've never made a video this long. This is the first time I've ever done something like this. I researched a lot for this video. I edited scripts. Even if you don't like it, I'm still going to do it again. We'll see what happens, but it would be very much appreciated. Thank you so much for your time.